Hello and welcome to the Under Centre podcast. I am your host, Daragh, and I am joined by two of the weekend's masked dancers during the halftime show, Fionn and Jake Woolhead. Guys, how are we this week?
Yeah, not doing too bad. Obviously watched the Super Bowl over the weekend. Had a very lazy day yesterday, but all in all, good.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
Good.
A bit sad now that the football's over for the season, so we've got to get through that. But that reality hasn't quite hit me yet. We're still on our way to the Super Bowl. So
I was going to say, Jake, like me and you had the right idea to just sort of make sure we had the days off. Fionn, how were you yesterday having to actually work on the Monday after a Super Bowl?
yeah, well, my boss would argue I probably never really work, so I don't think he saw much of a difference in productivity. But yeah, I did manage to crawl myself out of bed. Didn't quite make it to the fourth quarter, I have to admit. Didn't make it to the full-time whistle, but got to see most of it. Got a good impression of the game. Saw all the scores anyway, so we'll give our rundowns now in a minute. But yeah, it was a tired one all right on Monday, but I managed.
Well, that's the important thing now, to get that sort of level of just above average consistency and work, so that if you do have one of those days where you're low, it's like that's just a normal day for him, so it's fine.
Doesn't stand out, yeah.
There's no difference.
Yeah, never outperform. Always just be slightly above average, and then nobody will ask too much of you. It's grand.
It's called a tendency breaker in the NFL. You got to do the Bill Belichick, control what's on tape.
Well, maybe go a little bit above and beyond when it comes close to review time. Then you can go back to the norm. That's what it's. Then you can go back to the norm after that. But guys, we do have a packed show this week. We're going to be talking a lot about Sunday's game. But before we do, if you are watching this on YouTube, please make sure you like this video and subscribe to the Dynamos Podcast Network to keep up to date with our podcast and browse through other podcasts that are on the network for you to watch or listen to, just like the Superior Comics Show and the new boxing and MMA podcast, The Creeping Southpaw. Also go to our social pages and follow them. We are on facebook.com/undercenterpod. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at undercenterpod. If you have already liked and followed us on there, thank you very much. If you haven't, just make sure you go and search for us there. And if you are spelling center out, make sure you are doing it with an R-E instead of an E-R. Just that is for our American listeners. But on to the football. And we have a new Super Bowl champion. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Kansas City Chiefs 31-9 at Raymond James Stadium on Sunday evening. Tom Brady was voted MVP after throwing for 201 yards and 3 touchdowns. But the true stars, in my opinion, were the Tampa Bay defense, particularly the D-line, making Mahomes run for his life all night long. A point a certain person made in our preview last week and who was right about. But guys, what did you think of the game? I'll start with Jake first.
Yeah, I mean, it started off, it was okay. There was some back and forth. Patrick Mahomes, to me, he was kind of overthrown a few or underthrown a few receivers. Didn't look very accurate to me. And then, of course, you mentioned that the Buccaneers D-line had just kind of gone off on those 2 backup tackles, which I mentioned. Vita Vea had a nice little game for himself, but it was certainly not the result I was hoping for. If we're going to be honest, I kind of lost interest halfway through the third quarter, near in the fourth quarter. There was just no competitiveness left, and I didn't enjoy that as much. But it's the Super Bowl. What can you say?
Yeah, I agree with Jake. I also agree with you, Daragh. I think the stars were the Buccaneers defense. I think they definitely deserved to win the game. I don't think any team played terrible, and that seems like a weird statement given that the Chiefs scored only 9 points. But what I mean by that is they didn't beat themselves, right? The Buccaneers had a game plan that the Chiefs could not adjust to, and that's how the game played out, as opposed to the Chiefs falling apart at the seams and the Buccaneers not having to do a whole lot to win the game. I felt sorry for Mahomes. He did play, in my opinion, quite well. He made some amazing throws from really weird, strange angles like he always does. But credit where it's due. That defensive line, like you mentioned there, they found the formula and they made him run. They made him uncomfortable. And I think they hit on a really interesting strategy that I feel like maybe only works for the Super Bowl, and I think that's highlighted by the fact that the game in the regular season was the reverse, in that if you double team Travis Kelce and Hill, you take away all the options as long as you can get Mahomes uncomfortable. And they managed to do that, and hats off to them. Their defensive scheme was, in my opinion, perfect. I'm a little bit confused how Tom Brady won the MVP. I guess maybe it's because it's hard to pick out one guy unless the defensive end gets 4 or 5 sacks. It's hard to pick out one guy on defense to give the MVP to. Tom Brady did what Tom Brady does. He was clinical. He was accurate. I thought maybe Gronkowski maybe deserved the MVP if you want to give it to an offensive player. He really undid what the Chiefs were trying to do to them and be really physical at the line. We saw a lot of holding penalties, a lot of physical play from the Chiefs defense. And he just showed he's just too big, too fast, and he knows how to lean on guys, how to get a little bit of space. And he really did a lot of damage. Didn't have a humongous amount of yards, but got those touchdowns. Now the most touchdowns, I believe, of any target and quarterback duo in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. So he was very impressive too. So they were my 2 big takeaways. Credit completely the Buccaneers. Their defense had a great game plan that the Chiefs couldn't adjust to. And also, unfortunately for the Chiefs, their game plan got very well undone by the Buccaneers. They found the exact weak spot they needed to find to get the game done.
The only thing I'll say to your points there, Fionn, is that you said kind of the Chiefs didn't do anything to kill themselves, but there was quite a lot of penalties defensively for the Chiefs, and even a few on the offense. I think I seen at one point towards the end of the second half that the Chiefs had something like 10 penalties for 110, 120 yards, and at the same time the Bucs had 2 penalties for 10 yards. I think it was 2 false starts or something. So I think a lot of that played in. A lot of the Chiefs seemed to be kind of getting a bit antsy and not being able to play the type of game they usually are, which is winning a lot of the time. And then with Patrick Mahomes, I said it last week, it was just, he kind of, like, he's an amazing player. Nobody can say that. He does these types of he has this throw, that one where he was like lying Superman style. That was incredible. But he does have a tendency to run himself into players or run himself back out of the play and then run himself too far out of the play and not be able to come back from it. You just got a couple of sacks where, albeit like the defensive players were screaming in at him and he couldn't do anything about it. But other times he was just running himself out, doing a twirl, and then a sack. He just got demolished. I think one time he lost the ball, but I think he was down by the time they called it. But I think some of it was on Mahomes this game. I think usually you can't say that, but there's only so much hero ball he can do. And then just the Bucs defense against them tackles, they just couldn't stop them. They just could not stop them.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be so harsh on the defensive penalties. I think that came into play. I think that was a result of their scheme or their plan coming into the game. I don't necessarily blame the players so much as the coach in there. I think they must have had a similar idea to what you see a lot of when we play football. Is there's 2 types of players, right? There's the physical guys and the fast guys. The physical guys can't handle the speed and the fast guys can't handle the physicality. And they decided the Chiefs are blazing fast. We're just going to try and bully them. And it didn't work. It just didn't. Got undone not only by Gronkowski, but they knew where, like, Antonio Brown had some great plays in the short dynamic region where you're forcing guys to make cuts quickly off the line and never be able to get their hands on them to really interfere with that route and get that jam on the line. So yeah, I don't know if I'd necessarily put the same blame on the penalties, but yeah, I do agree, as you mentioned very well, Jake, in our preview show, he did have the tendency and did it a couple of times, Mahomes, of running 10, 20, at one point, I believe 30 yards back from the line of scrimmage. Now, in that case, he got the ball with that arm all the way back, but that is going to cost you. And I think it comes from the ideology in the Chiefs, like I mentioned in the preview, of like, we can create a spark, and they're one of the few teams that can force a momentum change as opposed to just ride along and like build into a momentum change. And again, like you mentioned, he has been guilty of maybe over forcing that too often in these games.
I think a lot of younger quarterbacks end up trying to do that anyway, and especially when you have the skill level of Mahomes. Now, it's probably something he'll have to learn. He is only 3 years in the league, so he's got a lot of time left in him to learn. So hopefully he does.
Well, if I could throw the ball 70 yards, you'd be hard pressed to tell me not to do that every single play.
Yeah, I think that what was it, that crazy PFF stat that came out after the game that Mahomes ran for 500 yards just trying to evade the Tampa Bay defense, just getting looking for time to throw on Sunday. But yeah, I think Mahomes is obviously came into the game with a severe issue of turf toe, and obviously news broke on the Saturday night that he was going to need surgery after the game. But I don't think that hurt as much as the offensive line play did. At times, I saw all 4 pass rushers from the Bucs in that game running straight towards Mahomes, and the Chiefs O-line were just standing there as if like they a ghost just went through them. Or at times I thought I was watching the Seahawks O-line and Russell Wilson running for his life. I've seen those scenarios all too often as a Seahawks fan. But the ability of the 4 D linemen, especially Shaq Barrett and JPP in particular on Sunday, to get pressure meant they didn't have to blitz Mahomes as much, maybe as Kansas City thought they were going to do, which meant that they could load the backfield, and that took Tyreek Hill out of the game, like you guys were mentioning. I think also what they did was I think they had a line in their minds, and that if anyone passed this line, that they would be double covered in terms of Kelsey and Hill, because Kelsey did get a bit of success with a few routes in the middle of the field, but he wasn't getting a lot of yards. I think they were sort of they were obviously playing a little lighter zone coverage a lot of the plays, and I think Kelsey got the ball, he was able to go, but I don't think he made the line of gain any times. He was getting maybe 6-7 yards at a time. One thing I thought that the Chiefs were going to do, like maybe they would have tried to do this to sort of negate the pass rush of the Bucs, which we all knew about. It wasn't exactly a phenomenon in this game. Was I thought they might have done a few more dump offs and maybe screens to the running back, but they never seemed to get any of that going, and they persisted a little bit with Edwards-Helaire having a few nice runs, but for most of any other times they tried to run the ball, they knew that the Bucs were going to stop them. They are the number 1 rushing defense in the league for a reason. But guys, what do you think of this kind of a surprise from Andy Reid, who, has been given these plaudits as being a great offensive mind, and rightly so, but he seemed to come pretty undone here in this game?
Yeah, I think one thing that stood out to me that all of us mentioned is Andy Reid is famous for having that one play that you've never seen before that he pulls out and that stumps people. And I don't think we saw that unless it got blown up so fast that we never got to see it materialize. But that was one thing that really stood out to me. It looked like an regular season game from the Chiefs offensively. Now, granted, it didn't even look like that because I've never seen them not score a touchdown in the whole time Mahomes has been there. So that was very unusual. But yeah, it really stood out to me that they didn't try anything weird or unusual, especially when it became obvious what the Buccaneers' game plan was, and to try and get them away from that. And another thing along the same line, what jumped out to me is I heard some of Mahomes' interview after the game, and he said very clearly, it sounded like the Chiefs knew what the Buccaneers were doing on defense, and that was taking away the sidelines, double covering Hill and Kelsey. And for me, it's very unusual that an NFL standard offense can't figure out an in-game adjustment that will move you away from going towards the sidelines and try and target your 3rd, 4th receiver. So that was very strange for me, I have to say.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. I was going to make that exact same point. Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, all season long in the past 2 seasons have been one of the most creative offensive duos there has been in the league, and there was just no creativity in a lot of that game plan. I was expecting to see the few trick plays that we mentioned last week, that there could have been something that we didn't see, like you said, Fionn. But I think I feel like what actually happened was they had this game plan and they assumed they were going to be up or there was going to be something different, but whatever, they just didn't adjust away from that. It's a trait that a lot of offensive minded people, the coaches and stuff in the league, tend to be bad at adjusting sometimes, which I wouldn't have said that between the two of them, Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, but there was just no adjustment, like you said, and I thought there really would have been. If there was anyone you can do with Patrick Mahomes and the likes of Hill and Mecole Hardman, I was expecting kind of, a few jet sweeps, them kind of plays where you get the speed guys in, kind of get the defense going one way, flow the ball to the other side. But there was just none of that, and I'm not too sure why. As I said, I think it had to do with they thought they were going to be in a lead a lot of this game, and they just weren't, and they couldn't adjust their own game plan to match up with that.
I think there was a sense of the Bucs figured out the Chiefs better than any other team have this year. If we go back to the Week 12 game where they faced off, they were, I think 24-3 down or something at halftime. And I think since that, they are something like 56-3 up against the Chiefs. So obviously whatever happened in that halftime game, in that regular season game, something clicked with the coaches at the Buccaneers, and they have figured out a way to stop Mahomes and to stop this offense. And on the other side, obviously, the way to figure out the defense. So I don't know, like, it is a strange one, especially, and a lot of credit does have to go to Todd Bowles as well. He came up with a great scheme to stop the Chiefs throughout that whole game. And I know I tweeted out on Sunday that this is the same Todd Bowles that New York thought was not good enough to lead them into their next, I would say next generation, but, to lead them forward to hopefully becoming a relevant football team again. So, it probably won't be long till you see him in another head coaching role, hopefully anyway, especially with that performance on Sunday. But moving on and sort of looking forward, what do you think is next for these two teams? Do you foresee any major changes in the offseason?
No, I don't see too many major changes. I feel like the Bucs will want to just regroup and make sure everybody that started for them both offensively and defensively are back again. That's the biggest thing that they need to do, because if they can get Tom Brady back, who knows, maybe they go for another championship. Please say no, but that's what it could be. But the Chiefs, I don't know, like, you're obviously not changing quarterback. They probably need to start looking at tackles or some sort of offensive line. And then also that defense needs to take a look at as well, because sometimes they're just not playing very well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure what the cap situation is on both of these teams. I heard Tom Brady in his Super Bowl speech definitely suggested he was coming back now. I think we've seen that doesn't necessarily mean everything. I believe he was saying that in the Patriots the entire time until he now no longer was part of the Patriots. So,
well, he signed a 2-year deal, so he still has a year left on that deal.
So I think, but I don't think he's going to snap a retirement on anybody in the next couple of, I believe he probably will come back. I think it will depend a lot on guys like Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski now that they have that Super Bowl. Antonio Brown's a bit of a wildcat. He starts asking for wild money now that he has a Super Bowl ring on his finger. That could be something I see happening, and I don't know how Arians is going to take that. From all accounts that I hear, he's a pretty hard-nosed coach, and I think that's why he managed to get such a good performance out of Brown when he did arrive. I don't think we've heard much from him in terms of being a distraction since he got to the Buccaneers. There was that one news story as he arrived, but then after that seemed to calm down. Nothing new came out. And then I agree with you on the Chiefs side, Jake. I think they have a chance to run this back again. I don't think, like I said, they got undone, so they do need to have a look at maybe schematically what they're doing. But I think they got unlucky, 4 starters missing from their offensive line. I think that would certainly maybe not change the game, but could have offered more of a chance to stay in the game, let's say. Maybe not win the game, but stay in the game, or at least keep it closer. So I don't know if they feel like they need more depth. I know that's quite hard to add because you're not really sure how those injury breaks are going to go, and you don't want to spend big money on linemen when you end up not needing them. So that could be interesting. But I feel like both of these teams, and I reckon we're going to see this in a lot of the preseason power rankings and polls, I think they're going to be quite favoured to at least make it back to the championship phase of the playoffs next season.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Just one side of the ball for either side that I would look at, and it would be the Chiefs' defense. I think especially on their defensive line play, you know, I know Chris Jones is a stud. Frank Clark has had a okay season. I know he got a sack on Sunday, but, you know, I think they got to get maybe one other pass rusher there somewhere, whether it be from the draft or from free agency. In terms of the backfield, I think it's the lineback position that needs to be looked at. Hitchens and Wilson are decent players, but you want that sort of dominating, you know, commanding sort of person there to sort of, you know, that field general that you want. I know Tyrann Matthew has tried to do that, but if you're playing in the safety position a little too far back, it can be awkward at times. You want that someone in the middle. An interesting option if you want to look close to who you just played. I believe Levante David is actually a free agent this year, so if you can prize him out of Tampa Bay, I think that would be a really, really good signing for them. Look, we'll get into more specific players in the next couple of weeks when it comes to when the free agency market officially opens. But I think that side of the ball definitely would need to be looked on the offensive side. Look, listen, yeah, the O-line had its probably worst game of the season on Sunday at the worst time. They were missing 2 starting tackles in Fisher and Schwartz. They're going to come back. I think everything's going to be okay. They're out in the backfield, you know. We did see a lot of drops from Kansas City receivers on Sunday. Whether they can improve on that in the offseason, or you're going to have to look elsewhere, because Tampa Bay have given other teams the blueprint to beat the Chiefs. So if you're going to keep Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce quiet, then you're going to need to have that third receiver that's going to help in these sort of games. And previously it was Watkins. I know he is normally a good, you know, third receiver to have. And I know he was carrying an injury into this game, which could have possibly hampered any sort of production he may have had, because I think he only had 1 catch in Sunday's game. But, you know, that sort of third one, you know, Hardman is prone to drops. I don't know about Robinson. I think he's a free agent this year. I don't know if he's going to hang around. So that third receiver, I think, could really help Kansas City going forward too. Finally, guys, before we move on from the game, I have to ask, what did you think of the halftime show?
I don't know. I can't even tell you what I thought, but I'm not even like sure how I feel about it at this moment. When I started off, I had a lot of streaming issues and I wasn't sure if it was the stream or the weekend, just doing weekend things.
I had the same. Were you on the Game Pass?
Yeah.
I was on the Game Pass too. Obviously, that it was everyone.
Yeah, because I heard from somebody else that they had audio streams issues as well, but I just wasn't sure if it was a weird weekend halftime show thing.
Well, I have to say I got the same. I don't know if I had audio issues, but it definitely sounded crap. I had sound the entire time, but it sounded useless. I was not a fan of the running around in circles with lots of flashing lights and gold everywhere. That was a bit shite.
But to be fair now, Fionn, every halftime show needs a moment in it to become a meme for the next 3 months. And that was it. That was it.
Yeah, I think I heard he put in 7 million of his own money to make that thing look the way he wanted. I don't know where he spent $7 million. Like,
I think it peaked at the start for that optical illusion where everything was like together and then they were all apart. You know,
that was the only thing. And then he seemed to move so fast. I don't know how he got like all the way up from the top, all the way down. They must have had an elevator. That's where the 7 million came. And guys, just before we wrap up on the Super Bowl, I don't know about you guys, but how nice was it to finally be able to listen to Tony Romo on a Super Bowl instead of the other 2 fellas we usually have to listen to over and over again. I love listening to Tony Romo. I thought it made the Super Bowl much better.
Yeah, you would listen to Tony Romo
Yeah.
analyze the game, any game throughout the entire season, especially the Super Bowl. It's just so nice. He's got like, he just knows what he's talking about, obviously, and he says it in a really good way as well, where he's explaining a lot of it too. So it's not like he's saying in quarterback speak and you're a bit lost. He's just explaining it in a very clear way. He's so much better than any other commentator.
And
Well, actually,
also,
can I ask you this? Sorry, before you go into, guys, who do you prefer, right, of duos then? Do you like Nance and Romo,
yes,
Buck or Buck Aikman, or Collinsworth and who's the guy from NBC? It's Chris Collinsworth and what's his name? You know who I'm talking
the
about? Though?
Ian,
Yeah.
Ian something.
Yes.
His name is
Yeah,
spelled
yeah,
Ian,
yeah.
but they call him Ian for some
Ian,
reason.
yeah.
That bothers me so much. I don't know why they do that. It's Ian, like call him Ian. I think definitely Romo for me is the best. And then Collinsworth's not bad. And for some reason, I just really don't like. I think it's because I'm a Washington fan, and Joe Buck and Troy Aikman are massive Cowboys fans.
Yeah, I
both
don't
of them
like them.
somehow. So
I
no,
don't
I'm
like
not a
them.
big fan of them.
Oh.
And guys, before we finish on the Super Bowl as well, what happened to football where you couldn't have a little like shouting match with a player on the other side? Tyrann Mathieu and Tom Brady. When did that become a foul to tell the other fella he's a bit shy and for him to tell you that you're a bit shy? Like, all he did was wag a finger and it was a 10-yard penalty. I don't buy that at all. I think the referees didn't have a great job there. Like, whatever about the fouls and let that stuff go. It's the Super Bowl. That's not taunting. That's not unsportsmanlike. This is the final. I'm going to tell you you're shy and you're going to have to prove that you're not. I didn't like that at all from the referee.
I believe Brady texted him after the match and said,
even that's a load of shit.
Sorry,
Brady, own it. Like, everyone hates you anyway, right? You go and prove us wrong by winning the Super Bowl every 2 years. But, like, don't apologize for telling Tyrann Mathieu he's shite while you put 40 points on him. Like,
he sort of proved it, but that's definitely Goodell talking to the referees before the game, saying, "Look, listen, these are the most eyes we're going to have in any game all season. Do not let like taunting or stuff get out of hand. Just throw an L flag here and there, then they'll stop it." Had to have been. It had to have been, because I agree with you, Fionn. I think any other regular season game, they just let that stuff go.
the taunting flag on was it Winfield over?
Well, that was great.
That was great. He done one of them as well. Oh, that was good.
He gave Tyreek Hill the peace sign after Tyreek Hill did it to him. I think he said it in the interview afterwards. He did a flip right in front of me. I just had to get my revenge.
Worth it.
you've been thinking about that since week 10.
Totally worth it. Totally worth it. You're just about to win the Super Bowl and you just got your own back on a guy that torched you in the regular season. Of course you're going to. Just look, he only gave him the peace sign and nothing else. You know, but look, we'll move on from the Super Bowl. Although it was a one-sided affair, it was great to have the Super Bowl on, and it was still for me an enjoyable game. We look forward to it obviously again next year. Now we have the long wait till football again in September. Well, August, hopefully, maybe I'll even watch the preseason games. Maybe we'll see.
If there are any.
If there are any, exactly. Before we call it a day, we were going to end it there, but certain interesting news came out this afternoon, and we thought we should talk about it. Russell Wilson was doing the media rounds, and Fionn, you're going to love these quotes coming from Wilson for sure. And certain Seahawks fans, it's actually sent them into meltdown today. Wilson was quoted as saying he wants to be consulted in regards to free agent pickup and draft choices. He also said, and I quote, "I love playing for Seattle, loved it for years. You just never want to get hit. I've been sacked almost 400 times. We've got to get better. I've got to get better. I'm frustrated with getting hit too much." That's a little, that is clearly for me, looking at this, that's a shot at front office, head coach, at the recruitment over the last few years, especially on the O-line. He also said, "I'm not sure if I'm available or not." This is in regards to a trade. That's a Seahawks question. So that's another shot at head coach in front office. Guys, what do you think of the quotes?
I want to just let Jerry Jones, Fionn Malloy answer this question here, because he was up at Deshaun Watson not allowed to have a say in his free agent hiring, but maybe Russell Wilson might sway his decision.
Yeah, lads, I tell you what, why don't we just get rid of GMs altogether and all new quarterback contracts give them the power to run the team as they want. They get paid their massive $100 million wages plus team shares, so they become part owners of the team they're on. I think we need to give these lads more time to do. They just, every time they open their mouth, they just seem to go off on mad tangents. Like, can we get them back in the film room like the day after the Super Bowl so that they don't have time to come out with these outrageous, ridiculous statements? The only statement there that he said that I have sympathy for is the last one you mentioned, Daragh, where he's going, like, that's not a question for me. And I think that is fair. If we've seen it, if you're not in control, like he's saying that he wants to be in control, I think it is fair to deflect that question from the media asking, are you going to be traded? I think it is fair to say, hey, look, talk to the Seahawks about that. Like, I don't get to decide if I have a trade. I don't have a no trade clause.
He does have a no trade clause.
Oh, he does? Okay.
He
so
does.
then, but I mean, I can appreciate that. They're just gone, like, it's a stupid question. Like, of course, I believe for any price, any player is on the trade block. Like, that's just the reality. So it's a kind of a dumb question to try to fill time. But in terms of power, like, what do you guys, I don't know. How are you guys going to defend him here? Should he really have the power to, like, hire the players that he wants? Like, what makes this guy qualified to make any of these decisions? He's very good at throwing the ball. He has no proven track record in coaching, in running a team, negotiating contracts, managing salary cap. Like, probably his wife does all the budget in the house. So, like, how's he going to manage a football team? I don't understand this. Where are these guys getting these notions from?
You're going way over. He's not asking to manage contract. He's just wants to have a say. I like Allen Robinson. I need this tackle. Give me these guys. You're paying this dude a lot of money to be good. You have to give him tools to be good as well. You can't.
That's your job. His job is to be good. Your job is to give him tools. His job is not to be good and pick the tools that he wants.
No, but he should have a say, and he definitely needs to. He can't just be giving the ball and then a Swiss cheese O-line try to stop Khalil Mack or whoever is trying to attack. It doesn't matter even what defensive ends are going up against that Seahawks O-line. Sometimes they're just coming through anyway. You need to put him in a position to succeed if you want the team to succeed.
Well, okay, there's two options here. We either draw a face on a watermelon and let him talk, tell him his inputs to the watermelon. Then he got an input. No one was listening. Or he could do what Luke does and talk to his brother's friend's wife's best friend's cousin and just tell them all the guys that he wants. That would get it off his chest.
Look, this is kind of like maybe I guess it's a hot take, but maybe it's not the take that you think is going to be coming from the mouth of a Seahawks fan. But
get rid of him.
Try
Fionn, I'm sort of siding with more on yours end of things here. I think that Russ is just being a little impatient. I think since he signed his massive contract, the Seahawks have picked up a good free agent signing in Brandon Shell to help in the right tackle position. They got rid of probably the worst right tackle in history in Jermaine Ifedi. They've drafted a young stud in Damian Lewis to play right guard. You cannot get a whole new O-line in one offseason. It takes time. So they've gotten two positions sorted. They have left tackles sorted with Dwayne Brown as long as he comes back next year. So now this offseason, you have left guard and center to sort out. You know, Mikey Patty, you know, great guy. You know, he puts it all there in the game, but he's too injury prone. So that means he probably will be replaced this year. And Ethan Posich is Ethan Posich, and you can just let him go off to the sunset and do whatever he wants, you know. But I think in terms of the quotes where he talks about his sacks as well, like obviously he must be attributing that to the O-line. You know, I think that's, you know, I agree that he has been sacked and hit way too much for a star quarterback, but he does have to take some of the responsibility. Just like we talked about with Mahomes on Sunday, his indecision at times, coupled with him running into sacks, don't help. Too many times I've seen him do exactly what Mahomes did on Sunday. Turn this way, like spin that way, turn it. He doesn't even know where he is, and defenders are just standing there, and he runs straight into them, and they take the sack. So it's not all the offensive line's fault. Now, in terms of recruitment and stuff, I can understand some issues. Like let's just say for an example, okay, the Seahawks signed Craig Olsen for this season. When did Craig Olsen significantly participate in any game? Did you hear his name said at all? Like even casual fans looking in and say results and something like that. Apart from a touchdown in week 1 against Atlanta, he didn't have another touchdown. And he wasn't.
I completely forgot he was in the league this year.
Exactly.
Exactly. I thought you were saying, let's just imagine the Seahawks signing Greg
No.
Olsen.
And they gave him $7 million as well. You know, and they didn't play him, you know, and that sort of cap room could have been used. And I agree on someone else that could have helped. But like that now, I think that, like we talked about, and like Dana talked about last week as well, a big issue with the Seahawks last year was teams figured them out and they didn't adjust. Russell Wilson didn't adjust either. I do not believe for 1 second that Brian Schottenheimer called every play and Russell Wilson just went with that and didn't sort of take things into his own hands at times. He can see a field. If he sees that a certain play is not going to work, it's up to him to change it. He always tried to go for the deep balls because they worked in the first half of the year, and he still persisted in the second half, holding on to the ball for too long, which contributed to these sacks, which he's complaining about. So I think that he has to take a lot of responsibility. You can say all these quotes you want, Russ, but he has to also say, well, it's my fault because I did X and I did Y also.
It's all just chatter, isn't it?
This is the thing. It's the off season, so anything that like during the regular season that would be like considered a level 1 is now a level 100 because they need stuff to talk about. So any little quote is going to be dissected. But, and as I say that, I'm going to give this sort of hot take right here, and it kind of is this level 100. But you could possibly, now it may not happen this season, it may happen next season. You could possibly be seeing the end of Russell Wilson's time with the Seahawks.
Russell Wilson to the Giants for Daniel Jones, straight up. Who says no?
Good young player. He's a good young player.
Good young player. You know, fumbling issue,
Plenty
but you know,
left in him.
He won't have to throw the ball that much in a Pete Carroll offense anyway. So it's okay.
But it'll be like 8 years before he starts whinging about sacks. So like,
yeah, but look, I think last season, he obviously said these quotes, so they're obviously allowed to come out this year. Last year, his team allowed the quotes to come out that I think it was his wife or something was looking to move to the New York area, which means he's also looking to move to the New York area, which led to the link with the Giants as well, you know. And like these, like you can't keep sending this stuff out. There's no smoke without, you know. So I don't like it, as much as it pains me to say this sort of stuff, because I don't want to see Russell Wilson leave the Seahawks. You know, I fear what a Russell Wilson less Seahawks looks like. You know, I don't know who they would have in there because I don't believe Geno Smith is going to be number 1 there for the Seahawks. But you know what I mean. I think that he's becoming frustrated that like he's in the prime of his career and he should be going and challenging for NFC championships and Super Bowls now, but they're not winning playoff games. So he's looking at saying, well, look, Tom Brady's doing this in Tampa and everything. And, you know, Aaron Rodgers has been going to NFC championships for the last 2 years. And like, what's going on here? We're not doing anything here. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, maybe, like I said, I wouldn't imagine anything would happen this year, but if nothing is done to appease him in terms of, you know, offensive line signings or receiving help, then maybe possibly those rumors accelerate a little more and you never know. He could be wearing a Giants jersey before long, Jake. I don't know. How would you feel as Russell Wilson as your quarterback?
Well, I mean, you can't say no. It's Russell Wilson, but I mean, I'm not going to go ahead and give Saquon Barkley a 2 first for Russell Wilson. How old is Russell now? Is he 32 or something?
He's 30. I think he'd be 32 when the season starts up.
Like, I mean, you probably get 8 years a good quarterback, and that's good. But like, if you just take away 2 first and your best playmaker, then what's the point in that?
Well, that's I don't see, like, I know he says he wants to play till he's like 45, but a lot of Russ's game is escaping
Mobility.
the pocket and mobility, and like when that goes, then you gotta just focus on your arm strength and accuracy. And the one thing that Russell Wilson was not criticized for, but the reason why he wasn't drafted as highly was his height. So if you're one of those non-mobile quarterbacks that stays in the pocket and you're not that tall, are you going to be able to survey the field and throw a ball? Don't know, but look, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Fionn, have you got anything to add on that before we move on?
No, I'm happy you guys covered everything that I was looking to say. Yeah, for sure.
Just seeing some breaking news. Giants legend quarterback Alex Tanney has just retired. I mean, we all love and know. We all know Alex Tanney by name. So
well, that's the Russell Wilson trade over with. If we weren't getting Alex Tanney,
yeah,
then
if
there
you
was
can't get Tanney,
no trade. No trade. It's done. Forget about it. You can offer Saquon and 4 first if you want. It's not happening. No Alex Tanney, no deal. But anyway, guys, we are going to call it a day. Before we do, make sure, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the Dynamo Podcast Network. Also, make sure you follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/undercenterpod. Also, our Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are all the same at undercenterpod. Remember, or before E in center 2. That is all the time we have. But before we go, I just want to bring one thing up. If you listen to this podcast, you probably listen to other NFL podcasts. And one of the most popular podcasts for NFL fans is the Around the NFL. And one of its hosts, Chris Wessling, unfortunately passed away over the weekend after losing his battle with cancer. Chris and the Around the NFL podcast were an inspiration to me personally in setting up this particular podcast. You could always tell that Chris loved the game of football each time you listened to him or anytime you've read any of his work. Even despite going through chemo twice, he still made the effort to be on the podcast and to give his opinion on whatever news or whatever games that was going on at the time for the pure passion of the game that he loved. And with the amount of posts and support over the weekend that we saw online, you could tell that showed how loved he was as well. So from everyone here at the Under Center podcast, thank you for everything, Chris, and may you rest in peace. And on that note, that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, and we'll speak to you next time.